Hare Krishna devotees, and welcome to the Bhagavad-Gita class. And today we're reading from chapter 5. It's the last text in the chapter. It's text 29. And this verse, Bhoktaram Yagnatapasham, is one, this Sanskrit, there was a devotee here who was giving us information about how many times Srila Prabhupada had repeated certain verses. So this one, he's repeated in his preaching about 400 plus times. And so it should sound familiar to us. Bhoktaram Yagnatapasham Sarva Loka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Nyatva Santim Richati Bhoktaram Yagnatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Nyatpamam Santivechati Bhoktaram Yagnatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Napamam Samtivechati. Word for word. Bhoktaram, the beneficiary. Yagna, of sacrifices. Tapasam, and penances and austerities. Sarvaloka, of all planets, and the demigods thereof. Maheshwaram, the Supreme Lord. Suhridam, the benefactor. Sarva, of all. Bhutanam, the living entities. Japa, thus knowing. Mam, me, Lord Krishna. Santim, relief from material pangs. Rachati, one achieves. Translation and purport by His Very Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. Please repeat. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. Purport. The conditioned souls within the clutches of the illusory energy are all anxious to attain peace in the material world. But they do not know the formula for peace, which is explained in this part of the Bhagavad-Gita. The greatest peace formula is simply this: Lord Krishna is the beneficiary in all human activities. Men should offer everything to the transcendental service of the Lord, because He is the proprietor of all planets and the demigods thereon. No one is greater than He. He is greater than the greatest of the demigods, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. In the Vedas, Svatasvatara Upanishad 6-7, the Supreme Lord is described as Tam Isvaranam Paramam Maheshwaram. Under the spell of illusion, living entities are trying to be lords of all they survey, but actually they are dominated by the material energy of the Lord. The Lord is the master of material nature, and the conditioned souls are under the stringent rules of material nature. Unless one understands these bare facts, it is not possible to achieve peace in the world, either individually or collectively. This is the sense of Krishna consciousness. Lord Krishna is the supreme predominator, and all living entities, including the great demigods, are his subordinates. One can attain perfect peace only in complete Krishna consciousness. This 5th chapter is a practical explanation of Krishna consciousness, generally known as Karma Yoga. The question of mental speculation as to how Karma Yoga can give liberation is answered herewith. To work in Krishna consciousness is to work with the complete knowledge of the Lord as the predominator. Such work is not different from transcendental knowledge. Direct Krishna consciousness is bhakti-yoga, and Jnana Yoga is a path leading to bhakti-yoga. Krishna consciousness means to work in full knowledge of one's relationship with the Supreme Absolute. And the perfection of this consciousness is full knowledge of Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A pure soul is the eternal servant of God as his fragmental part and parcel. He comes into contact with Maya, illusion, due to the desire to lord it over Maya, and that is the cause of his many sufferings. And as long as he is in contact with matter, he has to execute work in terms of material necessities. Krishna consciousness, however, brings one into spiritual life even while one is within the jurisdiction of matter, for it is an arousing of spiritual existence by practice in the material world. The more one is advanced, the more he is freed from the clutches of matter. The Lord is not partial toward anyone. Everything depends on one's practical performance of duties in Krishna consciousness, which helps one control the senses in every respect and conquer the influence of desire and anger. And one who stands fast in Krishna consciousness, controlling the above-mentioned passions, remains factually in the transcendental stage or Brahma Nirvana. The eightfold yoga mysticism is automatically practiced in Krishna consciousness because the ultimate purpose is served. There is a gradual process of elevation in the practice of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, jhana, and samadhi. But these only preface perfection by devotional service, which alone can award peace to the human being. It is the highest perfection of life. Thus end the Bhakti-Vedanta purports to the 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad-Gita in the matter of karma yoga, or action in Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada describes this verse as the peace formula, because everyone in the world is actually looking for peace, but they don't know how to find it. And everyone we see is stressed and depressed and in anxiety. And why? Why are they so? It's because they're trying to be the enjoyer. They want to enjoy, separate from Krishna. They want to be the proprietor and the controller. They want to control every situation and gather as much as they can to own. And they are neglecting taking complete shelter of the benevolent master, who is Krishna. So we have to become free from taking on this burden of trying to be the controller, because it's actually just brings a lot of headaches, because if we're trying to be controller, it doesn't come out the way we want. It's just like he says in here, desire and anger. We desire something, and if it doesn't come out the way we want, we either get frustrated and we get angry. And in the third, I think it's the 3rd chapter, is where they talk about this quality of lust and what lust means. because we have all these desires that we're trying to fulfill. So we can see in modern society how there are all these different organizations that claim to have the remedy or trying to find the remedy for peace. You have leaders meeting, trying to figure out how to bring peace. You have the United Nations with all the flags flying in the wind, trying to figure out how to bring peace among the nations. You have even among communities and family members trying to find peace, trying to find out what is the peace formula. But unless we surrender to the Supreme Person of Godhead, who's the controller and the master of everything, we won't find it. And also, as long as the cows, the animals, all the animals are being slaughtered. We can see what devastation is happening on the earth now. So many things are happening because it's the karma coming back for all the violence that's taking place in the world. So I'll read from Bhagavad-Gita 271, which talks about the basic principles of peacefulness. Vihaya kamaya sarvam pumam charati nishpriyaha nirmamo nirahankara sasantim adhigachati. A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. And when Prabhupada translates this, when he says free from desires, as living entities, we're going to desire, but we have to desire the correct thing. It's not that we can give up desires. We're going to desire one thing or another. So we can either desire to serve Krishna or we can desire to serve Maya. That's the only two choices with our free will that we can take. There's no in between. There's no middle part, either Krishna or Maya. So he says, I'll just read some of the. I'll just read. It says, to become desireless means not to desire anything for sense gratification. And then he says, in other words, desire for becoming Krishna conscious is actually desirelessness. So if once we desire everything for Krishna's benefit, then he's saying that is desirelessness. And then he says to understand one's actual position as the eternal servitor of Krishna, without falsely claiming this material body to be oneself, and without falsely claiming proprietorship over anything in the world, is a perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. One who is situated in this perfect stage knows that because Krishna is the proprietor of everything, everything must be used for the satisfaction of Krishna. And then he talks about Arjuna, who didn't want to fight for his own sense gratification, but he did not want to fight because this was for his own sense gratification. But when he became fully Krishna conscious, he fought because Krishna wanted him to. So that's the perfection of our life, is to, serve Krishna's senses and try to please him, to make him happy. And we all have had some experience where we've served Krishna and we served this and we have felt happy from doing so. We've gotten happy from doing so. So it says here further down, real desirelessness is desire for the satisfaction of Krishna, not an artificial attempt to abolish desires. So as I said before, we're living entities and we have desires, but we're having the wrong desires and we're using our free will in the wrong way. Also in 270, I won't read the whole thing, but I'll just read the translation of the Sanskrit verse. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So as I was reading and preparing for the class and looking through the Srimad Bhagavatam, a lot of times Srila Prabhupada talked about how the society and the leaders are not going to attain peace because they don't know what peace means. So there's another one in the Srimad Bhagavatam I'd like to read to you. And I know we've all had the experience of, before I came into Krishna consciousness, I've had the experience, I'm sure we all have, of desiring something and being really frustrated by not making enough money or not having things turning out the way we want, or for instance, like particularly mothers who have children, you know, you want certain things for your children, you want them to do things a certain way, but it doesn't always work that way. As children grow up, they do what they want to do because they have, Krishna has mapped out their life for them, and we can give them advice, we can try to raise them nicely within our power. But ultimately, those children are spirit souls. They came from us, but they don't have to do what we tell them to do because Krishna has already planned their life for them. So it's been my experience also that you can give advice, but you are not the controller of that particular spirit soul. They'll do what they want to do, you know, and they already have their path. And you can offer prayers to Krishna, you know, that they choose the right one. But ultimately, we're not the controllers, you know. I was thinking too, like, you know, there are a lot of times when you're feeling frustrated, even when you're trying to earn money to pay rent or do this or do that. This is what brought me into Krishna consciousness, being like distressed actually with the material situation and trying to make it work, and it wasn't working. So I'll read this verse. Where is it? Krishna. Oh, here it is. 1:16. So this particular, this chapter from the Srimad Bhagavatam is questioned by the sages. It's in Canto 1. Prabhupada, usually when I'm looking up things, I look in Cantos 1 and 2 because Srila Prabhupada had said that he put a lot of information in Cantos 1 and 2 because he wasn't sure how long he was going to be in his body. So if you look in Cantos 1 and 2, you'll find a lot of information. But this one, addresses the leaders of the people. The leaders of the people, this is 1:16. The leaders of the people are very much anxious to live in peace and friendship, but they have no information of the simple method of hearing the glories of the Lord. On the contrary, such leaders are opposed to the propagation of the glories of the Lord. In other words, the foolish leaders want to completely deny the existence of the Lord. In the name of secular state, such leaders are enacting various plans every year. But by the insurmountable intricacies of the material nature of the Lord, all these plans for progress are being constantly frustrated. They have no eyes to see that their attempts at peace and friendship are failing. But here is the hint to get over the hurdle. If we want actual peace, we must open the road to understanding of the Supreme Lord and glorify Him for His virtuous activities as they are depicted in the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then in this purport, first I want to say that the second paragraph summarizes the whole of chapter 5, what chapter 5 covers. And I've been noticing, if you keep reading the Bhagavad-Gita, so much more information keeps coming, something you may not have seen. It's like new every day when you read it. Some new information comes to you when you read it. You're like, oh, I didn't see this before. It gets very, very deep. So in this last paragraph, he summarizes the whole chapter, but he always comes to the point. The point is, as he says in the last sentence, but all of these things he's explaining. He's explaining all of these because there are so many different living entities who have so many different mentalities. So he's trying to address all the mentalities of the living entities. It's said in the introduction of Bhagavad-Gita how he follows the psyche of every living entity. So in all of this, he's giving each living entity what they're looking for at this particular development of their life or their whatever they're seeking, their spiritual. Because even in, I don't remember the chapter, but he talks about, if you can't do this, do this. If you can't do this, do this. If you can't do that, do that. Do you remember the verse? I don't remember the verse. Okay, so he tells you, so he's covering everybody. So he wants to make sure, that he's trying to bring all the living entities back into their original position as his eternal servitors. So however they're coming, slow or fast, he's making a way for everyone to come. Because we know, there, especially nowadays, the yoga is, the whole yoga scene is huge, So, okay. So it's said here in the first paragraph that the Lord is the master of material nature, and the conditioned souls are under the stringent rules of material nature. And we know that verse, it's 7:14, Daivi Esha Gunamayi Mama Maya Darat Yaya. That this material nature is very difficult to overcome. It's impossible to overcome. So, you can either serve him or serve her. And it's saying that the constitutional are under the stringent rules. That means that the rules are very tight. There's no escaping. No one can escape from the stringent rules of material nature. So we have to understand what is the actual one of the organizations, there was so many organizations, everyone's trying to, also we're addressing this thing of being the proprietor, the controller, and also trying to be the well-wisher and friend of everyone. Like, you have organizations, peace organizations, Greenpeace, Amnesty International, so many organizations that are in different foundations who are trying to help the poor and, trying to change the conditions in the world, when actually they're not able to. And it is, actually they want to feel good. They want to get sense gratification from it. They want to feel good. Well, I'm a part of this organization, and we feed the poor, or we, hand out clothes, or we go to Africa and we give them food, or we, Amnesty International deals with getting political situations and trying to get people out of prison who've been imprisoned for some political reason, So all of these organizations is because everyone is thinking, I'm also the well-wisher of everyone. So, it makes them feel good that I've done this. This is something I'm feeling good about. They like going there every day because they're thinking they're helping someone. But we know is in the scriptures it says whether pious or impious activities, it won't get you out of the material world. You're going to suffer death, disease, old age, and what was the other one? Birth, death, old age, and disease. No matter what you do, whether it's pious or impious, you won't get liberation, nor are you, worshiping the Lord, So whether it's pious or impious, it doesn't make any difference. The only way to get liberation is to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can attain perfect peace only in Krishna consciousness. And even if we're in anxiety in Krishna consciousness, a good anxiety, if we're trying to do the service for Krishna, then the anxiety is different from material anxiety. I was listening to a class by Chaitanya Charan. I think he's from Mumbai. And there were several things he said in the lecture I was hearing. And they were just succinct sentences like, we live as kings and gods in our own mental universe. So it's said in the scriptures that all these things that materialists are planning is just concoction of the mind. We're just making it up because it can never succeed. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then he's some of the other things, short sentences he said when he was giving the class is that focus not on God's rules, but focus on His purpose. And the best way to control our thoughts is to direct them towards the one who is always in control. So, my experience has been even when there's difficulties, we're going to have difficulty even if we're doing devotional service and in Krishna consciousness until we reach the transcendental stage, which I'm not at yet. Things do disturb, but turning to the scriptures, turning to chanting, and seeing the deities, and praying are help relieve us of focusing on the situation, whatever situation we are in, which may be difficult. So it takes a lot of discipline and focus to deal with whatever troublesome situation we have. Because we're in the material world, we're going to have difficulties, but just being in Krishna consciousness, chanting and trying to connect with Krishna and trying to develop love for Krishna gives us such a shelter. We're actually, when you look at the state of the world. As devotees, we're in a very, I call it a very charmed position to have the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and to have knowledge of Him, and be able to take Him as our refuge. So peace and friendship are impossible if the society is detached from the association of the Supreme Person of Godhead and His devotees. And there's there's a text in Bhagavad-Gita, 3:10. So Krishna is giving this directions on how to be happy. In 3:10, he's saying, "Be thou happy by this yajna," sacrifice. So that is our life. Our life is the sacrifice to please Krishna. And this is what will make us happy. It says, "Be thou happy by this yajna," sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation. So everyone, because we're spirit soul, everyone wants to be happy. And everyone's looking for happiness, but no one knows where to find it. And that also is part of our service. When we go out and preach, we want to help all the other conditioned souls. When we've been given something so sublime, it's our duty and our responsibility to share it with everyone, because everyone is suffering in this material world. One more quote. Shadava labhate jnanam tatpara samyatindriya jnanam labdha param satim acharindadi gacchati. A faithful man who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses is eligible to achieve such knowledge. And having achieved it, he quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace.